We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Confidence is not something you add, it's something you uncover. It's something you already have. And let's get real practical about what it looks like in real life. Confidence doesn't need to fix everything. A confident leader doesn't rush in to rescue. They don't grab the pen out of someone's hand. Rescuing feels productive. Overperforming feels useful, and being indispensable feels powerful. I know this because I wore all of those suits, but it's insecurity dressed up as heroism. It's totally the opposite of confidence. Confidence says, I don't need to be the solution. I trust you to grow.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode number 342, and another in our Edge of the Napkin series, where small, simple ideas, small enough to fit on a napkin, are big enough to change the way you lead, the way you live, and how you show up in the world. And if you've been listening recently, we've been talking a lot about my Magnetic Growth Aura series, confidence, congruence, calm, and contribution. And you may have already noticed that something interesting is happening. Confidence is the pillar that we talk about the most, but it also might be the one we misunderstand the most. Is it volume? Is it dominance? Is it certainty? Is it performance? And maybe you've even heard things like fake it till you make it, and that's how you get confidence. And none of that is true. Is confidence maybe something smaller, quieter, steadier, something you can feel in the room before even one word is spoken? In this conversation, we're going to unpack leadership confidence, not as hype, not as bravado, and not as ego, but as a state of being. And we're going to explore what confidence looks like in real leadership moments, what it looks like when you support someone else's leadership, how it shifts from scaling ego to growing impact, and how it's built through focus, align, act, the activation framework. You'll hear about how confidence isn't about wearing a cape, which is one of my favorite stories. It's not about being indispensable. It's not about fixing everything. It's about knowing who you really are, independent of your role. It's all about mental hygiene and alignment. It's about calm strength, and it's about contribution that builds others up. And maybe, as you listen, you'll notice, where are you still performing or acting out confidence? And where are you actually just living it? Because when confidence becomes a state, not a strategy, people can feel it. Your team can feel it. Your family can feel it. Even strangers can feel it. So go grab a napkin and let's talk about the kind of leadership confidence you can't fake. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize you don't need a cape after all. Let's dive in. Today's napkin has just one word written across it in bold ink: confidence. But not confidence the way the world talks about it, not bravado, not dominance, not hype, not performance. Real leadership confidence, the kind that people feel before you speak, the kind that settles a room, the kind that doesn't need a cape, doesn't need to overperform, and the kind that really builds other leaders up. That's the kind that never takes a day off. And when I talk about leadership confidence, I'm talking about something rooted in what I call the magnetic growth aura. And the magnetic growth aura is based on 4 pillars: confidence, congruence, calm, and contribution. Confidence is pillar one, but it definitely does not stand alone because confidence without congruence becomes arrogance. Confidence without calm becomes volatility. And confidence without contribution becomes ego. Real confidence is a state of being that emerges when all four pillars work together. It's not something you turn on and off. It's not something you perform. It's not something you put on. It's not something you posture. It's something who you are. It is who you are when you are completely aligned. And here's the truth. Confidence is not something you add. It's something you uncover. It's something you already have, but just don't know it yet. And let's get real practical about what it looks like in real life and what it looks like to be a real leader, not theory, not reality. First of all, confidence doesn't need to fix everything. A confident leader doesn't rush in to rescue everyone. They don't grab the pen out of someone's hand. They don't rewrite the emails. They don't interrupt and finish people's sentences. They sit, they listen, they ask important, maybe even just one question, and they let the other people think. They raise the bar for how everyone else can perform. And that takes confidence because rescuing feels productive, overperforming feels useful, and being indispensable feels powerful. And I know this because I wore all of those suits. But it's insecurity dressed up as heroism. It's totally the opposite of confidence. Confidence says, I don't need to be the solution. I trust you to grow, and I trust that I can help you do that. Number two, it gives right-time feedback. Confidence doesn't avoid hard conversations. It also doesn't weaponize them. It doesn't humiliate. It doesn't vent. It doesn't correct in public to look strong and powerful. It chooses timing. It chooses tone. And it chooses one-on-one, belly to belly, eye to eye. It says, I see you and I believe in you, who you really are. And here's something that will help you expand. And that's contribution. That's calm. That's congruence. And that, when played together, is confidence. It doesn't overperform. And this is something that's really misunderstood. And I did it for years without even knowing what it was. Let's define overperformance. Overperformance is when you exceed what's necessary, not because excellence demands it, but because your identity depends upon it. It depends upon you having the thing that people say thank you for at the end of a meeting. It depends upon you dropping the bomb that everybody sits back and gasps in amazement that you could be so wise, that you could be so insightful, that you could be so observant. It's when people stay late so people see you. It's when you volunteer for everything. It's when you take over because you don't trust and you give 120% because 100% doesn't feel safe. Overperformance is often praised. It's often celebrated. People think it's great, but it quietly trains your team to underperform because you'll pick up the slack. Confidence doesn't overperform. It does what's required fully, cleanly, and powerfully. And then it stops. It leaves room, it leaves oxygen, and it leaves space for growth. Confidence doesn't rescue. Rescuing feels compassionate, but rescuing steals others' capacity. When you rescue, you interrupt learning, you remove accountability, remove it. It can't come back, and you reinforce dependency on you. Confidence lets people struggle with support. Challenge builds character. It says, I'm here, but I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this with you and beside you. And that's leadership. And with you and beside you doesn't mean for you. It means they're doing it and you're there with them. What confidence looks like when supporting someone else's leadership is also really important to understand. You're not always the only leader in the room. Sometimes you need to be the leader behind the leader, the follower who follows like a leader. And this is critical. Confidence is not just how you lead. It's how you support other leaders. A confident leader doesn't compete with other leaders in the room. It doesn't subtly, quietly undermine them. It doesn't steal credit, and it doesn't need the spotlight. In fact, it needs nothing. Real confidence amplifies. Real leaders in the back of the room build. They say publicly, that was her call. That was his vision. That was their execution. And they're secure enough to strengthen someone else's authority. And that is magnetic. That builds culture. That builds legacy. And here's where confidence starts. It starts with a question. How do you build it? It doesn't start with posture. It doesn't start with affirmations. It doesn't start with louder speech. It starts with my activation framework: focus, align, act. And here's why. You can't be confident if you don't know what you want. Confidence begins with clarity. And if you don't know what you want, you will borrow goals and identity from everyone else around you because you think that they're important to you. You'll borrow expectations and titles and roles and approval. In episode 341, Dandapani comes in to talk about purpose independent of role. Not I'm a CEO, I'm a parent, I'm a spouse, but who am I independent of what I do for others? That's focus. You must know what matters to you, what you are building, what you will stand for, what you will not compromise. Confidence cannot exist without clarity about what you want. Because when you are unclear, you perform. You're on stage. When you are clear, you stand or you sit and you support. Focus after focus comes align. And people don't understand this, but it's really about mental hygiene and self-acceptance. This is where most leaders really powerfully struggle. I mean, lots of leaders struggle with focus. Most people struggle with what do you really want? But after that, alignment is internal congruence, and that's hard. It's mental hygiene. You brush your teeth, got to take care of your brain in the same way. It's cleaning the lens. And this is where we combine two powerful messages. One was the great Mr. Rogers. I like you just the way you are. And John Candy from Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, when he said, I like me, I really like me. Confidence is not self-improvement obsession. It's in self-acceptance with direction. So that's a little different. You don't build confidence by fixing yourself endlessly. You build confidence by accepting who you are and choosing growth consciously. Alignment means you clean up your self-talk. You stop rehearsing failure and you stop comparing yourself to everybody else on their timeline. You stop apologizing for existing in the way you are. Mental hygiene means watching your thoughts, interrupting negative loops, and actually just having positive ones. Being with who you really are, replacing all of that distortion with truth and love and acceptance. Confidence grows when the inner critic loses authority. And finally, act. Focus, align, act. Daily relentless action. Confidence is not conceptual. It's not a theory, and it's not a placard on the wall. It's built through action, small action, consistent action, aligned action. You cannot think your way or meditate your way into confidence. You must behave your way into it. Every day, you speak when it's uncomfortable. You set a boundary for yourself or for others. You give feedback. You ship the work, and you have a real conversation, eye to eye, belly to belly. Action compounds identity. Identity becomes your state, and state becomes your confidence. Confidence is a state of being. And here's the deepest layer. Confidence is not something you have, despite what people say. It's something you are. And because it's a state of being, there's no cheat day. There's no day off from being who you are. You can't perform confidence on Monday and abandon it by Thursday because it was too much work. You either live aligned or you perform survival. Confidence comes from a belief in who you really are. And that belief is reinforced by daily congruent action. So here's the leadership container. When you combine confidence, congruence, calm, and contribution, you create what I call the leadership container. And people feel safe inside it. Interestingly, you feel safe inside it. And your team then feels seen, stable, supported, challenged. Your family feels protected, understood, and controlled, and not controlled. Your family feels protected, understood, and not controlled. Strangers feel ease, presence, and trust. Confidence is magnetic. And only when it's grounded, though, in calm and contribution. So here's the shift from scale to growth for impact. Insecure leadership scales for ego, scales for all those vanity metrics. Confident leadership grows for impact and is measuring things that really matters. They may or may not be KPI, but the leader feels it. Insecure leadership asks, how do I multiply revenue? Confident leadership asks, how do I multiply leaders? Insecure leadership wants exit. Confident leadership wants expansion of capacity, and confidence shifts that question from how big can I get to how deep can we grow and what impact will that make? So here's two stories. Number one is a story about a cape. And I've told this story many, many times. There was once a CEO believed that they were the engine, and it's a he or a she. I've told this story to men and women. They solved, they rescued, they worked late, they outperformed everyone. Revenue grew, but so did exhaustion. And their team deferred everything to them. When they left for 2 weeks, performance stalled, and they were on the beach, whacking away on their laptop or their phone, catching up, rewriting emails. They believed that they were indispensable, but they were the bottleneck. One day, they stopped wearing the cape. They asked more, fixed less, listened a little bit longer, and productivity dipped for a little bit, but then it doubled. They didn't become less important at all. They became more powerful because they stopped performing and started leading. Here's another story I like to tell about confidence. It's about a quiet leader, a department head that was completely overlooked. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, she wasn't charismatic, but when conflict happened, she remained calm. When someone failed, she coached them privately, one-on-one, eye to eye, belly to belly. When someone succeeded, she amplified their success publicly because she believed in them. She stated, I believe in you. Turnover dropped and engagement rose. Results improved, and her confidence was not volume, it was presence. Some might wonder, confidence feels like a lonely road. How do I know that I'm making progress? How do I know that I'm growing confidence? Well, it comes from little clues, and you get these clues every day in little things. For example, an internal sense that you don't need to win every argument. You can publicly say, I don't know. You can also say publicly, I was wrong. I made the wrong call. You don't panic in silence. You don't worry about losing credibility. You don't rescue prematurely, and you give feedback cleanly, not about you, but about them. You ask for feedback about yourself without needing to assume, blame, complain, or defend. And that's confidence. And here's the hard truth. You can't build confidence while chasing approval. You can't build confidence while avoiding discomfort, sitting on the couch. You can't build confidence while hiding from who you really are. Confidence requires exposure. Exposure requires courage, and courage shows up before you show up. So courage requires action, and action requires clarity. Focus, align, act every single day. So here's the thing. Confidence isn't loud. It's grounded. It's not flashy. It's stable. It doesn't rescue. It develops. It doesn't fix. It expands. It doesn't dominate. It strengthens. Confidence is when you no longer need to prove and instead choose to build. And when you build leaders instead of followers, you stop scaling your ego and start growing impact. Confidence is not something you chase. It's something you live. So here's your question. Where in your leadership are you still performing instead of being? And what would happen if you stopped wearing the cape? Make it a great day.